So for those that don't know, around here on Trace Velo, I build some really cheap road bikes, mainly with parts sourced from places like AliExpress. Now, I have tried a lot of gear over the years, and on balance, I think this is the best value build I have ever put together. Now, sacrifices had to be made in certain areas to keep the costs nice and low, but still, in terms of price to performance, I think this thing is nearly unbeatable, actually. I've had a lot of requests for this, so today I'm going to go top to tail on this bike, break down all the parts, what they cost, why I chose them, and show the final weight of this bike as well. Plus, along the way, I'll throw in some other options for you because some of the parts I've chosen for this thing, yeah, are a little bit rogue. Plus, with prices starting to come down, I'll also compare this build to other bikes on the market to see just how good the value really is. It's also worth saying up front, I've paid for everything on this bike with my own cash. Nothing was sent to me for review or anything like that. The paid promotion flyout that I think will have shot out on the top left, that pertains only to the clothing sponsor spot I'll have partway through the video. Even though I say it's a sponsor spot at the time, I still need to check this box in the YouTube back end, hence that flyout in the top there. But anyway, enough of that. My name, as always, is Luke, and welcome back to Trace Velo. So let's kick it off with the frame. I've discussed this before, so I won't dwell on it, but it's the CF-025 carbon road bike frame from a brand called OG-Evkin. I bought it at the tail end of 2022 on AliExpress for just 386 quid. It has been utterly flawless. It's my daily driver. I must have done around 4,000 miles on it. By now, it was easy to work on. Nothing has broken or had any issues. It's very comfortable. I love the more relaxed endurance style geometry. Yeah, literally no notes on this thing. For the price, absolutely phenomenal. So I have a few options for you here, all 50 millimeters deep, all 28 millimeters wide on the rim profile, and all incredibly good value under 300 quid. My first suggestion, and an obvious one for those that watch my stuff, a pair of ENT disc wheels from Elite Wheels. These ones I've ridden around 3,500 miles. Yeah, they've been incredible. I've already done a long-term review, which I'll link down below, so watch that if you want to dig into the details. And you can pick them up for 260 quid right now. Although some of these prices were from a November Black Friday type sale earlier this month, but still the prices don't change that much. They're usually on for a good deal. Another solid choice, the ENT Disc 2.0 wheel set from Elite Wheels. They're slightly lighter, slightly stiffer, and have some redesigned hubs. These used to be more expensive, but for whatever reason on AliExpress, they're currently around the same price as the original ENT disc wheels. And finally, these completely unbranded ones from a company called Riot. I bought them a few months back for 300 quid, but they're currently going for 234 with free shipping. Yeah, pretty ridiculous. I've done 500 miles on them, and they've been fantastic, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to get some more miles on them before I give them a full recommendation. So a couple of options for you there. If you pressed me on it, I'd probably say go for one of the ENT disc models, dependent on this next choice. Okay, interesting one, this one. If you're going for value above everything else, get a set of wheels that supports 6-bolt disc rotors rather than center lock. 6-bolt discs are generally much cheaper than their center lock counterparts. I mean, these discs I've run for a few thousand miles. Love them. 3 quid each. The main drawback is that Shimano and SRAM favor center lock. For example, the fancy finned Ice Tech rotors that Shimano wants you to buy for 50 quid each only come in center lock. For general riding, though, I don't think they make any real difference. If you live on a mountain and only do descending, they might be worth it, or maybe if you do a lot of braking in crit races, something like that. But for day-to-day riding, my £3 rotors stop just as well as the Spenny Ice Tech ones. So coming back to the wheels, if you're focused on budget, get the original ENT disc model because they support 6-bolt rotors. The updated 2.0 version only supports center lock. But put it this way, if I can spec out a wheel set, I generally prefer 6-bolt. You can get center lock to 6-bolt adapters, but they cost extra and just add extra weight. Now, for a value build, tubeless doesn't really make sense in my opinion. All the wheel sets I've showed you, they support tubeless, but just stick with clincher. It is so much cheaper. So these tires have been amazing. Goodyear Eagle Sport 700 by 30C actually, so quite wide. I got them for 28 quid each on eBay, but you might need to shop around for a good deal. For something even cheaper, these CST tires from AliExpress, I got a pair of 700 by 28C tires for 25 quid. So yeah, what's that, like £12.50 each? I've run them for about 500 miles, no punctures, great grip. Yeah, a good budget option. As for inner tubes, no question. Ride Now Ultralight TPU
inner tubes. I got 2 for 11 quid. They are 5 or 6 times lighter than a regular butyl rubber inner tube. And maybe I'm lucky, but I've never had a puncture with them actually. But yeah, these are a great option.
Again, I've covered this quite recently, so I won't dwell on it, but the best value group set in existence right now, if you ask me, is the L-Twoo R9 disc that you can pick up on AliExpress. It's an 11-speed mechanical group set with hydraulic disc brakes with a little hack that I showed you in the review video I did. Basically running the gear housing all the way through the frame to the rear derailleur. Shifting is fantastic, the ergonomics are lovely, and the braking performance is pretty phenomenal as well. I paid 140 quid for my set, but there's a bit of a sale on right now. 94 quid you can pick this thing up for. Yeah, ridiculous.
Now you could go electronic with the group set, right? So using the L-Twoo ER9 or ERX, but it's 3 or 4 times the price, maybe a bit more. Mechanical shifting, definitely the way to go for a value build like this. Also along the same lines, and we'll cover it again when it comes to the chain and cassette, but in my opinion, 11 speed is the only sensible choice for a bike like this.
Right then, quick sponsor spot for you. So yeah, Siroko are back to sponsor this one. And they're a Spanish company that makes some really wicked cycle clothing. I've worn their stuff on every ride that I've done for I think the last 4 years actually. But anyway, it's winter, at least here in the UK. And Siroko makes some great gear to help you stay out on the bike. This J1 jacket is an absolute staple of mine. I've had this one about 3 years, wear it all the time. Yeah, super comfortable, shower proof, keeps you nice and warm on the bike, and I think it looks really stylish too. I love that high collar. Yeah, I think it looks really good. Their bib tights are great too. I've been using their slightly more premium SRX Pro Supreme bib tights, but even their kind of more basic Black Sea bib tights are really, really decent. So if you want to check out Siroko, they do the whole spectrum of cycle gear. And if you use my link down below, it'll get you 10% off the entire website, which is pretty cool. And it helps me out a little bit as well. So yeah, have a look. Anyway, enough of that, let's get back to it. Now, if you buy a full group set from the likes of Shimano or whatever, you'll get chain, cassette, BB, and cranksets. They'll be included. But if you buy one of the cheaper group sets on AliExpress, you'll probably need to get these bits separately.
So with that in mind, 2 choices for cranksets here. So my preferred choice, with 1 or 2 caveats, is this Rero carbon crankset. It looks great, shifts well, and it's really lightweight at about 570 grams. And it cost me 130 quid, but you can get it now for 80 quid. The caveats. So the 24mm axle or spindle is aluminium. I've not heard of any failures with this particular crankset, but there is a reason Shimano use steel for all their axles. The 24mm aluminium ones have been known to shear or snap. I've run them for years and it's personally never happened to me, but it has occurred. The second caveat, this retaining bolt for the cranks, it did snap on me. In its defense, I had taken the crankset on and off about 25 times, swapping it between bikes and fiddling with it. I think the average person is unlikely to do that, and I did over torque the bolt as well. A replacement bolt was pretty straightforward to find, however, and I do cover that at the end of this video if you're interested. The second option for cranksets, this PR3 crankset from Cenex. It's about 300 grams heavier at 780 grams, but the axle is steel. I've run it before. This Cenex stuff is bulletproof. So bottom line, if you want something that's going to be hassle-free, or if you're a bigger rider, close to sort of 100 kilos, I'd recommend the Cenex crankset. But if you don't mind tinkering with your gear, the weight savings on the Rero one are pretty tasty.
Failing both those, however, you can usually find a pretty good deal on a Shimano 105 R7000 crankset if you look around, especially if you go secondhand, so that could be worth a look as well. Absolute no-brainer on this one, an 11-speed, 11 to 28 tooth monoblock cassette from a brand called ZTTO. Some people mentioned the shifting wasn't great, but I kind of question that. I've used this particular cassette on a number of different group sets, and the shifting has always been really good.
Now, the shifting might not quite match up to the shifting performance on Shimano's latest Hyperglide cassettes, but this thing is 60 quid for a cassette that weighs 200 grams. For that kind of lightness from Shimano, it's this Dura Ace cassette for 4 times that price. The teeth on this one are all steel, no aluminium used here, so durability has been great. I've probably put, I don't know, over 1,500 miles on it this year. Yeah, no issues at all. Fantastic cassette for the money.
Okay, real easy one. This one, a SRAM PC 1110 chain. I've used them for years at this point. You can usually get them for about 10 quid, something like that. They shift well, last ages, job done.
Also, while on the topic, like I said, 11 speed, it's the only sensible choice for a bike like this. As soon as you jump up to 12 speed, group sets, chains, cassettes, chain rings, they all carry more of a premium. And rather than the standard HG free hub, you've also got a new micro spline free hub standard from Shimano to contend with. That one additional sprocket with 12 speed, it does carry some benefits with regards to things like gearing ratios, but you can still get all the cheap lightweight cassettes and stuff in 11 speed. Virtually all wheel sets still support it. Spares are easier to find. Yeah, stick with 11 speed if your focus is value.
Okay, so this one seems to be so contentious at the moment, right? Everyone wants that really free spinning Crankset. And if you're paying 12 grand for a bike, I get it, but let's be frank here. This build, it ain't about that.
Now, the only advice I'd really give in regards to bottom brackets is select a frame and therefore a bottom bracket that easily supports a 24mm axle standard. It's the Shimano Holotech 2 standard, therefore the most popular, so everything around it is much cheaper. The majority of popular bottom bracket standards will natively support it without any adapters, so BB86, BSA or T47 are probably the easiest to deal with, but it's worth checking. Going for a SRAM dub standard or maybe a 30mm FSA crankset, something like that, can narrow available options and prices will usually increase. For this particular frame, it's a Pressfit BB86 and I'm using a ZTTO BB that just threads together. It's been great, 2 years on the bike, still going strong. Now you can choose BBs with ceramic bearings, but I couldn't really care less about that on a build like this. Standard steel bearings are cheaper and get the job done.
But generally, ZTTO bottom brackets have served me pretty well regardless of the bottom bracket standard. But if you can find them, this brand, Ginia, yeah, I've always been really impressed with their bottom brackets. And if I can find them, those are the ones I usually choose. Okay, saddle choice is an interesting one, right? Because not all bums are the same shape. What works for me might be uncomfortable for you, right? But that aside, this saddle I've used for the last 2 years from a brand called Zeus. I've showed it before. Absolutely phenomenal.
It's a carbon saddle with a squishy 3D printed rubber upper. At the time, it cost me 90 quid, but I'm pretty sure this one from Riot is exactly the same for 30 quid. I actually bought it to make sure, and it's just arrived. And yeah, it does look identical. Failing that, this is a cracking saddle. Very different shape and much less padding, but it's carbon again, so incredibly lightweight. I think it's about 50 grams lighter than the other one, and you can get it for around 20 quid, maybe cheaper.
Okay, 2 choices for you here. Both of them have been great, and I've reviewed these in detail already, actually, so I'll put those links in the description in case you kind of want to dive in and see what they're really about.
Now, if you prefer the Shimano SPD SL standard for your cleats, which is the most popular by far, it's these carbon pedals from a brand called Oniri. They're probably the ones you want. Nice and lightweight at just over 200 grams for the pair and cost 40 quid. I've run them for the last 5 months. Yeah, no issues. Second option, these carbon composite pedals from a brand called Costello. Now, they use the Time Espresso based cleat system, which is not a very popular standard, but I actually prefer these. I think they're lovely to use and they're much lighter as well at 150 grams for the pair. But yeah, both are great options.
Okay, right, so this is where sacrifices had to be made a little bit. So you can find some pretty cheap integrated carbon handlebars on AliExpress for about 40, 60 quid, something like that. But I've tried a number of them and they've all been pretty dreadful, to be honest. I'm not sure I'd give them like a full recommendation. So in order to get a decent set, I recommend spending about 100, 150 quid, something like that, which is a bit out of budget for this particular build.
So with that in mind, I'm running a basic aluminium bar and stem. Yes, they are a bit heavier, but they're just so much cheaper. I mean, these bars cost me 10 quid, and I think the stem was 8. I've had them for years. I don't even remember where I bought them, to be honest, but a cheap bar and stem, so easy to find. Let's have a look on Planet X here. 10 quid for a handlebar, and eBay for a 100mm stem. Yeah, about 10, maybe 15 quid.
So again, I'm not too precious on this actually. You can spend an absolute fortune on bar tape. I mean, this stuff from Siroko, I'm sure it's good, but it's 50 quid. And most of the physique stuff, you're looking at over 35 quid.
For builds like this, I just go on eBay, type in black bar tape and choose something like this. It's cheap. If you put it on well, it won't slip. Yeah, gets the job done for sure. I actually prefer the cheaper stuff that doesn't have sticky backing, to be honest. It's just much easier to apply. Now, I've not really found a decent bar tape for cheap on AliExpress, so if you do have any suggestions for me, yeah, definitely let me know.
Okay, 2 other bits. So this carbon bottle cage, I got 2 of them on AliExpress for 12 quid, and you'll need some gear cable housing for this particular build. I got mine on eBay. It was 8 quid for 4 meters worth. You won't need that much. So just go on eBay, type gear cable housing, and you can usually find what you need for less than 5 quid. Right then, so a slightly updated look. I got a haircut yesterday, but anyway, so right here, this is pretty much what I see as the ultimate value road bike that doesn't drastically compromise anywhere, if you know what I mean. So this is a setup that I'm running at the moment. I've got the Goodyear Eagle Sport tires, this Riot carbon wheel set, the Rero carbon crankset, and these Oniri pedals. Up until quite recently, I was actually running this ENT disc wheel set with these CST ZAR tires that I mentioned. Hence the fact that in some of the B-roll, I would have shown you the bike did have some tan sidewall tires on. But yeah, this wheel set right here and this one that I'm currently running, they're pretty much comparable in terms of weight. Like I said, I'm just trying to get some more miles on this wheel set here. But regardless, let's get this thing on the scales. So I'll drop that on there like so, and we come out at 7.790, so just under 7.8 kilograms, including both pedals and bottle cage. For such a value-oriented build, yeah, that's pretty impressive actually. So let me cover the total cost of this thing, and like I said, I'll also compare it to some other bikes you can currently get on the market.
Right then, the total build cost to me, including additional taxes and shipping, just under 1,300 quid. However, if you'd have bought the same stuff in that November sale that I mentioned, you could have built an identical bike for under 1,100 quid. I've highlighted in green the updated parts and cost, so it's worth shopping around and waiting for a sale if you can. But let's compare that, right? So Canyon is a great place to start. Their Endurace CF7, a very similar bike in a lot of ways. Carbon frame with mechanical 105 and hydraulic disc brakes. More expensive at 2,069 quid and weighs in at just under 9 kilos, so over 1 kilogram heavier. You could also look at their Ultimate CF SL7, again, mechanical 105 with hydraulic disc, slightly lighter but still heavier at 8.46 kilos and nearly twice the price of my build at 2,300 quid. The kind of Canyon that comes closest in terms of weight is this Ultimate CF SL7 Di2. It's obviously electronic shifting, so much better in that sense, and 7.88 kilos, so very close in terms of weight, but it's nearly 4.5 grand. Now, the closest in terms of price from Cannondale is their Synapse Carbon 4 at 1,500 quid, but it has 10-speed Tiagra and weighs 9.5 kilos. This specialized Athos Comp comes closer at 7.6 kilos, and it does have 105 Di2, so electronic shifting, but again, it is way more expensive at 4,250 quid. So yeah, it should be pretty clear. The bike I've built blows all of these out of the water in terms of value.
So yeah, there we go. I absolutely love this thing. I think it might be my favorite bike that I've ever built, actually. There's just something about it. It really kind of epitomizes what I try and do on this channel. It's so value oriented, but it rides really well. It's dependable. It's such a workhorse. And because it's so cheap, I don't mind knocking it about. Like, I'll throw it in the back of the car. If it gets leaned up against the wall and scraped slightly, no big deal, right? I just love using it. I love getting about on it. And yeah, absolutely wicked machine. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this kind of deep dive I've done on it. Subscribe if you like this kind of thing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode. And if you've got any questions or comments about this or anything I've talked about today, yeah, let me know. Right, anyway, that's it. See you next time. Ciao.
It's the bonus clip time.
Okay, so yeah, there's kind of one thing that I kind of left out of this episode, and that's the fact that unfortunately you can't actually buy this frame from OG-Evkin anymore. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but they discontinued production earlier this year because, like a lot of frame manufacturers out there these days, they're ditching this slightly dated design where you've got exposed cabling out of the front in favor of a frame where everything is routed kind of invisibly through the headset, which is kind of the new style these days. So you can't get this frame, but you can get this one. And a lot of you will recognize this bike because it's the bike I built up using yeah, this wheel top EDS TX wireless group set. And also, when I bought this frame, it got damaged ever so slightly in shipping. There's a small crack in the down tube that me and my brother fixed it, and we did an episode on that, which is quite cool. But basically, I bought this frame, and way back when I bought this one, and in the meantime, I got chatting to OG-Evkin because I really like their stuff, and they sent me this frame, which some of you might recognize. But yeah, it's exactly the same as this frame here. It's their key one. But yeah, they put my branding on it. So they've put Trace Velo on there, and they've got my signature colors on the stripes there, which is pretty cool. And you could buy this frame as well if you want. But what I'm going to do in the next episode, I'm going to transplant everything from this bike onto this new frame. And the interesting thing about that is that obviously this is a fully mechanical group set. And when you've got exposed cabling out the front, you can make sure all of these curves are nice and shallow to kind of reduce the friction on the kind of gear cable in there. But when I'm scrunching all of these into kind of a fully integrated headset like this, where there's kind of the potential for quite sharp corners, I'm interested to see if I can replicate the perfect shifting I get on this bike on this frame here. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one actually. I think it should be okay, but I've never attempted it before. So yeah, it could be an interesting one. So stick around for that, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Right, ciao.